on their right. And they're in the dark, they're walking towards the paradise. But you know what? That's not enough to get them there. Their iman and their good deeds are not enough to get them there. So they say, رَبَّنَا أَتْمِمْ لَنَا نُورَنَا. O our Rabb, complete for us our light. وَارْحَمْنَا إِنَّكَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. And show us mercy, you are upon all things powerful. So in the end, you need Allah's light to get you there. This is why when they get to the paradise, they say, Alhamdulillah, alladhi hadana lihada. All praise belongs to Allah. All thanks belongs to Allah, who guided us to this paradise. وَمَا كُنَّا لِنَهْتَدِيَ. We could never have guided ourselves. لَوْلَا أَنْ هَدَانَ اللَّهِ. Had it not been Allah who guided us. So these are from the things I'm trying to share with you regarding the Sahaba is they were conscious of where they're heading. Everything they did had this outlook. You guys are in your careers now, you're in your studies now. Why are you in the study that you're in? Oh, I like it. Oh, what does Allah like for you? And you know what? One of the big problems I see personally, it's a Christian disease in my opinion, and it's injected itself into the ummah. I really want to memorize the Quran. I really want to learn tajweed. I really want to learn fiqh. I really want to study tafsir. I. What does Allah want you to do? This question has disappeared almost. What is the need of you? What capabilities do you have? And how can you maximize them to your full potential, even sacrificing what you might want to do? Because that may not be the priority. That may not be the need. The need may be something you don't have an inclination towards, but it's a need. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking of it. I'll give you an example. I hate talking to strangers. Personal example, I hate talking to strangers. I'm sitting in the train, I went to Baruch to do some paperwork. I came back, I'm sitting in the Long Island Railroad. There's a white guy sitting next to me, trench coat, suit, the regular corporate guy, right, rush hour. And 45-minute train ride, I'm sitting next to him, and I'm like, well, I really don't want to talk to him. I really don't want to talk to him, right? Because he was cursing on the phone, etc., etc. I was discouraged. But then I'm like, on the day of judgment, whether I like to or not, Allah will ask me for these 45 minutes. And he was a financial analyst. I could tell he had a Wall Street Journal on him or whatever. So I'm like, what can I talk to him? What can I talk to him about? I gotta find something. I see like a newspaper on the floor. I think it was the New York Times. Pick it up, open up the financial section. I'm like, oh, I had no idea what financial market is. Okay, no idea. Man, the market's crazy nowadays. He's like, yeah, it's just unbelievable. I'm like, yeah, start talking. 45 minutes go by, he shows me the picture of his daughter and how he left Catholicism and he's searching for the truth. And I invited him to the masjid. He's bringing his whole family, inshallah, in a couple of weeks to come to the masjid. But I didn't want to talk to him. I didn't. What am I trying to tell you? The Sahaba didn't care for what they wanted. Even in the matter of deen, shaitan will come to you and say, do this, you're really good at it. Hey, learn to recite more. Take 20 hours just learning to recite. Forget everything else you got to do for Allah. So in the end, people, mashallah, he recites really, really good. You got to figure out you're the slaves, Allah is the master. So what you want to do for Allah is even dictated. This is what I'm trying to convey to you. And this is what the Sahaba understood. This is when they gave their pledge of allegiance to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They said, fil usri wal yusr, fil manshat wal makrah, fil manshat wal makrah. They said, in difficulty and in ease we will follow you. Whether we're inclined to follow you or we're not inclined to follow you, we will follow you. This was their character. This is what we need to really, really understand. Because see what happened in Christianity and the continuing deterioration in Christianity is you go to church and the way they invite you to church now is we're going to have a dance party or we're going to have a festival or we're going to have a piñata or we're going to have a balloon sale or whatever. They're going to do all these fun things, right? And people come to church and they feel good about themselves because they had a good workout. They're like doing all kinds of things which make them feel better about themselves. So Christianity, to keep its audience, it's now what it's doing is not what you can do for God, it's what God can do for you. And that mentality at a much lower level at this point, and inshallah it'll disappear, it won't increase, is seeping into the minds of Muslims. What can Islam do for me? Or what can I do according to my inclination, according to what I want to do for Islam? This is one thing we have to be careful of. Because the mandates of the Sahaba were dictated by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, dictated by the Quran. Whether Musab wanted to go to Medina or not, whether he wanted to leave the company of the Prophet or not, I would assume he loved the Prophet so much he didn't want to leave him. But he understood he had to go. So he went. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, now I'll give you this example of the love the Sahaba had for the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He's sitting with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the mushrikun come and they start cursing Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, cursing his wife, cursing his sister, cursing his mother, All kinds of obscene language. He's sitting there quietly. Sabr. They said, Abu Bakr is not going to move like this. They start cursing Rasulullah and his family. At this, Abu Bakr Siddiq got up, enraged. As soon as he got up, the Prophet walked away. And he said, forget these people. Why am I wasting time responding to them? Let me go ask why my beloved left. So he ran to Rasulullah, asked him, what's the matter? Why did you leave? He said, so long as you were sitting there, the angels were standing around us, saying, Abu Bakr ala al-haq, he's on the truth, he's on the truth, he's on the truth. As soon as you got up, they all flew away. And I don't sit where angels are not in my company. What am I telling? From this example, what am I telling you? Why did Abu Bakr as-Siddiq get up? From what he thought was the appropriate thing to do for Allah's deen. Right? But even that was curbed. You don't even decide what to do for Islam other than what the Prophet has instructed. This is the kind of sabr. This is the kind of perseverance and consistency we need to develop in ourselves. This discipline. I'm not going to name you, you know who you are. Like, so what are you doing for Allah nowadays? Well, here and there on the side. Everything else is on the side. This is what has to be done. Your slavery to Allah has to be established. This, your school's on the side. On the side I work full time. On the side I'm taking 12 credits. What I'm really doing is I'm serving Allah's deen. This needs to be our prerogative. This is what the Sahaba were like. They weren't just, entertaining speeches, and they weren't just people that we just hear about and we say, oh, they were so great, what can we do? They had laser beams shooting out of their eyes, and they were bulletproof, and there was no kryptonite at the time, so, it's not like that. They were human beings. They made mistakes too. They made mistakes. And the Prophet ﷺ corrected them. They fell, and then they got up and they walked again, because they knew they couldn't stop going. They couldn't stop moving towards their journey. So we need to be clear on our resolve. I end this ayah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, سِيمَاهُمْ فِي وُجُوهِهِمْ مِنْ أَثَرِ السُّجُودِ. You see the markings on their face from the impact, from the consequence of making sajda. Some Sahaba were of the opinion that there's a mark that appears on your forehead from sajda. Some people in later generations, actually, like the Shia, for example, do this as a regular practice. A group from among them, but even from Ahl Sunnah, people did this. Just to become part of this ayah, they would put like pebbles on the musalla, and then when they go to sajda, give a little rub. So over time, they got a little mark here. It's like, I got a guarantee I'm going to paradise. That's not what's being referred to here. Ibn Abbas, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, Allahu a'lam, had from what I understand, the closest opinion. He said that this is referring to those who reflect the fear of Allah and the love of Allah on their face. And he used this from the hadith of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is reported in Ibn Majah. I'm going to read it directly out of here. مَنْ كَثُرَ صَلَاةً بِاللَّيْلِ حَسُنَ وَجْهَهُ بِالنَّهَارِ. The one who exceeded his salah in qiyam, in the night, that his face becomes beautified during the day. سِيمَاهُمْ فِي وُجُوهِهِمْ مِنْ أَثَرِ السُّجُودِ. You will see the markings on their face, you will see the signs on their face from the effects of doing sajda. You will see them as people of sajda. You find, particularly among our youth, brothers and sisters, the more we learn, the more arrogant we get, the more argumentative we get, the harder to deal with we get, the more intimidating we get. But if we are people that are being described like the Sahaba are being described, then the more we learn, the more the sign of sajda should be on our face. We're humble. We're always ready to be corrected. We're always ready to be criticized. They were ready for it. Again, tangent. Umar ibn Khattab, radiallahu anhu, he's walking, he's Amir al-Mu'mineen, he sees somebody drinking in his house. He's peeking in. He jumps in the house, breaks in, and grabs him. You're drinking in my rule? You break the Sharia of Islam? And the guy who's drunk, he goes, well, I broke one rule, you broke three. He's like, what do you mean? Well, first of all, you shouldn't be spying. وَلَا تَجَسَّسُوا. Right? Second of all, you should knock when you come in. Right? And third of all, you did dhann. You assumed that I was drinking. I could have been drinking anything. But you assumed from the look of me that I was drinking. Right? اجتنبوا كثيرا من الظن. Stay away, for the most part, from dhann, from assumption. Umar ibn Khattab, Amir al-Mu'mineen, he hears this, lets him go, walks out. Leaves, doesn't say anything, just leaves. Head of state, open to criticism. A couple of months later, he's giving khutbah, he's giving a dars. And that man walks into the crowd. He sits in the back. Umar ibn Khattab saw him. Khutbah ends, he calls him over. He goes in his ear, I never told anybody about you. And the man goes to Umar ibn Khattab, yeah, and I stopped drinking from that day. But this was the character of the Sahaba. Even the way they corrected people were so beautiful. See, he had his anger. He went out of control. He realized it, and he stopped himself immediately. So the fact is, we will make mistakes, but who of us will acknowledge our mistakes and stop and go back? So now, ذَلِكَ مَثَلُهُمْ فِي التَّوْرَاةِ, that such is their example in the Torah. وَمَثَلُهُمْ فِي الْإِنْجِيلِ, and their example in the Injil is كَزَرْعٍ أَخْرَجَ شَطْأَهُ فَآزَرَهُ فَاسْتَغْلَظَ فَاسْتَوَى عَلَى سُوقِهِ. This analogy is that of a seed planted into the ground by the farmer, and when it comes out, it's just a little tiny, weak little, object, right? It's like a blade. Then it starts strengthening and thickening, and it rises higher and higher. It becomes more obvious to others. Before, you don't see it. It's like, something you step on. You don't even realize it. But as it becomes higher and higher, people go around it. And as it becomes more beautified, flowers, and it comes to its full bloom, then it becomes a matter of beauty, particularly for the one who sowed it. If you ever worked on your backyard, I don't think you do. Usually older people do that, right? When they plant a seed and they see the plant grow in a month or in a week, they're really proud of that plant. Who is the farmer in this case, in this analogy? It is Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. These Sahaba who were, at that time, nobody considered them significant. Nobody knew what their worth was. And even their development was taking place, right? But as the times grew, as difficulties grew, as the winds came, as the hurricanes came, as the storms came, and they kept growing, and they kept moving forward, and they kept moving forward. With their development, يُعْجِبُ الزُّرَّاعِ. The farmer is so, impressed with them. لِيَغِيظَ بِهِمُ الْكُفَّارِ. So that the kuffar, the disbelievers, can be disgusted by them. You see, in the Quran, there's tamthil and there's mumathal. There's the one that, this analogy of the plant is referring to the companions and to the Prophet ﷺ. But the style of the Quran in a couple of places is, at the end of the analogy, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will go back to the actual matter which was being given an example of. So at the end of the ayah, Allah mentions the kuffar directly. Instead of giving another analogy, to make it clear that the previous analogy refers to the Sahaba, refers to Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As the ayah begins, Muhammad Rasulullah anyway. So now, لِيَغِيظَ بِهِمُ الْكُفَّارِ, so the kuffar can be disgusted by its growth, by their growth. وَعَدَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ مِنْهُمْ. Allah has promised those who truly believe and engage in righteous deeds from among them. This minhum is very important. The Sahaba, we agree, are all except for those who the Prophet himself ﷺ identified as munafiqun. Other than those, we assume and we believe that they are all sincere. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keeps them in check even then. So He says He has promised those who have iman and do righteous deeds from among them. Maghfiratan, covering of their mistakes, wa ajran azima, and a huge reward. Ajr would be what they got. Ajran azima, much more than what they ever could imagine. Huge, immense, great reward, great payback. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised to the Sahaba radiallahu anhum ajma'in. Now, lastly, inshallah, and I'll stop at this point, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has been described in Surah Tahrim, يَوْمَ لَا يُخْزِ اللَّهُ النَّبِيَّ وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مَعَهُ. On the day when Allah will not humiliate the Prophet and those who believed with him. This is an ayah that should give us a clear understanding of the greatness of the Sahaba. Allah has promised that He will not humiliate those who stood with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The only two ayat revealed on the seventh heaven are the last two ayat of Surah Baqarah. In those ayat, the first entity honored is the Rasul of Allah. آمَنَ الرَّسُولُ بِمَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْهِ مِنْ رَبِّهِ. But who's the second entity honored in those ayat? وَالْمُؤْمِنُونَ, and those who believed. So the Sahaba have been honored on the seventh heaven. In the only two ayat that were revealed, there, all the ayat came down on the earth. But this is at the incident of Mi'raj. Those ayat came. And even then the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala were honored. So we need to take them as our role models. We need to study their lives to try to understand the level of commitment and sacrifice that they had, and then seriously try to analyze what was their mission and how did they go about it. What exactly was it? What gave them, was their spirituality a means in and of itself, or an end in and of itself, or was it a means to something? Why were they so committed to Allah? Why were they constantly being told to sacrifice and give up and remember Allah? In the middle of the battlefield, they're being told, angels are with you. In the middle of the discussion of Anfal, there's a disagreement among the hypocrites are raising this issue, and some Sahaba who didn't know too much raised the issue. saying, we should get some booty, more than booty than the